Hey bitch, and welcome back to me talking about people I hate. Now guys, in today's video I honestly think I might have to do my first ever YouTuber apology video. So as many of you guys know, I made a video reacting to the Unnatural Vegan's original video about me. She has since made a video reacting to me, which is what I'm going to react to today. It's like a cycle of reacting and I love it. I want to briefly say before I get into this that a couple weeks ago, a few of her videos actually popped up in my Explorer page and I started watching them and I actually really like her videos, which is really funny because I think I had some harsh words for her in my reaction to what she was saying about me and the equestrian community as a whole. I don't remember because it was so long ago. I don't even know. It was like a couple months or 3 or 4 or 5 months ago now that she made her video about me and I made my video about her. I first of all think it's important to state in the beginning of this video because I do feel bad about my behavior in the initial video I made about her. Mostly because I don't think I really gave her a fair chance and a fair reaction. I had been getting attacked constantly from vegans for those several months that I made the responses to that vegan teacher, and people basically telling me that I'm a fake and equestrians can't be vegan. And as somebody who's been vegan for since I was 17, so 5 or 6 years of my life now, you know, it hurts. It really hurts that as somebody who really cares about the environment and I try to do the best I can for not only myself but to promote that to my audience, I legitimately stopped talking about veganism on my channel and just strictly focused on animal activist work because of how much hate I would get on a normal basis of people saying that I wasn't really vegan because I ride horses. And I only recently started speaking out about it last year because I just kind of got fed up with it. I personally do believe that equestrians can be vegan, and I'm sure I will get into it in this video, and I've made many other videos on it in the past. As somebody who tries very, very hard, and who has tried very hard to maintain a vegan lifestyle, and obviously I make mistakes, every vegan makes mistakes, for the last several years of my life, it's just really disheartening that all these other vegans who eat the same as I do, who stand up for the same activism as I do, who believe in the same things I do, will judge somebody based on this one aspect of their life and say, well, everything else you do is invalid because of this one thing. I totally understand why a lot of equestrians get turned away from veganism. I know a lot of friends who are equestrians who would love to be vegan, but simply feel like they can't be vegan just because of how horrible the vegan community is towards equestrians. The vegan community literally goes and attacks equestrians. And as somebody who's been in this community my whole life since I was 5 years old, I can legitimately sit here and tell you that equestrians very much love and care about their animals, and they try very, very hard, the vast majority of them, to give their animals the best life possible that they deem is a good quality of life. There's very few equestrians out there, and I understand there are some that exploit their animals for money, that only use animals for show purposes or for jumping, or push animals too far in exploitative industries of equestrianism. And I get that, and that's what I speak out against, but I don't think I really gave the Unnatural Vegan a fair shot, a fair reaction, because I feel like I went into that reaction already being angry at all the vegans who had previously been attacking me and my entire community. So I think this is important to announce in the beginning why I was upset and angry and not really giving her a fair shot. So I wanted to react to her response to my video and see if I can clear things up and just see if we can have a better conversation this time. The most dishonest, lazy response video, question mark. At least I look good.
So this video from Raleigh Link 14 is a response to my video, which was a response to her video, which was a response to that vegan teacher's video. Normally, I would not respond to a video like this simply because Raleigh does not even bother to watch my entire video, and she ends up misrepresenting me incredibly badly, partially because of that.
Okay, so I want to apologize for that right off the bat. I didn't watch her entire video, which, to be honest, is something that I don't normally do. I usually almost always watch the entirety of what I'm reacting to. I didn't watch her entire video. I think I said that in the video I made, which was not fair. It was not a fair representation of her. I shouldn't have done that. I should have watched it all the way through. You know, I was just kind of at the end of my rope with this. That was the reason I didn't react to her whole video. I was just kind of over everything at the time. It didn't have anything to do with her. It was just the entirety of the whole situation for months of just getting attacked by a community that I once thought was my own community. But I'm sorry. I know that was not a fair representation of her. I get how it came across.
I think her video is a really good example of someone's bias getting in the way of looking at something objectively. Obviously, I can't know for sure what's going on in her head, but I think that given what she gets wrong, just obvious stuff she gets wrong or doesn't even bother to look up, and her demeanor, just how angry she is with that vegan teacher and with me, that makes me think it's very likely what's going on here. She's just too close to horse riding and horse ownership to be able to look at the issue calmly and objectively.
All of the stuff that was going on at the time was the reason why I was flustered, I was angry. I didn't want to listen to any more vegans talking shit about, you know, a community that I've grown up in for my entire life, that I know there's a lot of bad shit that goes on in the equestrian community. And that's literally been my entire focus the whole time I've had this channel, is bettering the lives of animals physically, emotionally, and just their overall well-being in captivity, because I just think that's very important. And I understand that a lot of people have an outside view of equestrianism and they think all equestrians are just riding horses to dominate them and treat them like shit. And my objective was just, no, that's not what's happening here. And I just kept getting upset with all these vegans who just kept claiming that same thing over and over, that we don't do anything but torture our animals and use them for our own personal gain. And it just makes equestrians sound like villains when these most often of the time are people who really do love and care about their animals. I didn't react to her whole video. I could only get through that much of it. I'm sure there's things I missed, but you guys can go watch it if you want.
Maybe don't do that. She stopped right before I showed why her supposed evidence for why it's pain-free for horses if you ride them correctly, why that didn't actually support that claim. And she missed the really important part that might have kept her from misrepresenting me so badly in this video. I know it's easier to just react to stuff and not stop and reflect or even bother to watch the whole video, but it's ultimately, I think, dishonest because you're painting an inaccurate picture for your audience. Many people are not going to go back and watch the original video. They are relying on you to be accurate in your presentation of that video. Her cold open, the very first thing in her video, it's a snippet from later in the video, completely misrepresents my position. So the very first thing people see is not what I believe and not what I said in my video.
You're right, and I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. I mean, I get it. I understand how it comes across to her. That's not something I normally do. In regards to putting a bite at the beginning of my videos, I usually always do that in every video. I'll pick a piece that's usually the most interesting out of the whole video and put that in the beginning to tie people into watching the entire video as a whole. That wasn't my intention by putting that piece at the beginning. However, I understand how it came across. I understand how she feels misrepresented, and that's fair. It's ridiculous that you even made a video reacting to me. I'm so mad right now because if you're seriously gonna sit there and advocate for every single human being to just dump their horses back into the wild, first of all, that's illegal and nobody can do that. But second of all, you're asking for all those horses to have a death sentence. You know why? Because the BLM doesn't even want the 33,000 horses that we do have left in the wild to be in the wild. And they're rounding them up by the thousands every single month and sending them across borders to be slaughtered and killed.
Is it best to rewild horses? I don't know. Is it best to leave them fenced in and alone or to ride them? I don't know. And she doesn't know either. And we can't ask the horses. The conclusion as to whether or not some horses should be ridden is, I don't know. and no one else does either. Horses are probably harmed at least a little by being ridden, and much more with badly fit saddle, etc., and they probably don't love it. At the same time, for a captive horse, it is possible that it adds so much enrichment to their lives that it makes up for that pain. It's trying to make the best of a bad situation, right? Of being bred into captivity and being someone's property. I'm not saying horses should be released into the wild, and I'm not saying they should not be ridden. I'm saying that it's complicated, and her dismissal of the issue without any argument really is just not productive.
So I completely agree with that. I've said that many times in many videos, and I'm sorry that I didn't watch the video all the way through to realize that that's what she said. I feel really bad about that because that does represent her entire argument that I made in the video about her. I will say that is something that I have said in a lot of my videos. I've talked openly, even just in my last live stream, where nobody really knows what's the best for these animals. So we just have to go based off of, you know, peer-reviewed studies, veterinary advice, etc., on what is, we think, the best proper care and treatment for these animals, which is what I currently advocate for with riding properly fitted tack, making sure your horse has enough room to run around every day, and, you know, exercising them, etc., not letting them wither away. And do you have to ride a horse every single day? No, you can also exercise them in many other ways, but the reason I support riding is just because it's the easiest way and usually the most mentally stimulating way to give your horse the proper exercise, along with liberty work. And to be honest, I do liberty work a lot more than I ride anyway. Do I agree with people that take their horses out and just ride them all day long? No, absolutely not. I do think there is an appropriate way to ride horses without hurting them with proper tack, and that's just my opinion. But overall, do we know what's best for horses? No, we don't. We just go off of what we think is best for them based on the evidence we currently have to support that. I've even said many times that if it came out that riding horses was truly bad for them, that I wouldn't be advocating for riding horses. So I think it's important to make those distinctions. I mean, I understand what she's saying, so I get it.
Also, as many of the commenters on her video noted, her BLM claim appears to be totally wrong. Now, I'm going to continue the video as though it's not incorrect, just for the sake of argument, and because going into all of this and debunking the claim would really be like a video unto itself. But a lot of her argument against rewilding horses hinges on her BLM claim.
Okay, so I want to clarify something, and she might clarify it too. My entire argument is not based on BLM horses going to slaughter. Although I still stand by that. I know that there's a tremendous amount of BLM horses that are sent to slaughter every year. I understand that I got the initial reports wrong. I believe there's actually, according to last year's statistics, about 95,000 horses in the wild. However, I do still stand by the fact that wild horses, although there are some benefits to them being in the wild, like recently this National Geographic study came out, if you were to just dump all of the captive horses out in the wild, not only would they not really know how to survive or acclimate properly, but on top of that, I think it would be incredibly destructive to the environment. And that was kind of my entire argument that I was talking about in that video, apart from the slaughter aspect.
When it comes to something that we're really invested in, we're probably not going to be the best person to listen to on that particular topic. There's a good chance that someone who really loves to do something like ride horses is going to ignore potential problems with that activity.
I actually completely disagree. I feel like I am the perfect person to respond to her.
Of course she thinks she's unbiased. That's like the point of biases, is that they're often invisible to those who hold them.
I agree that I have a biased opinion. I don't think I meant for that to come off as like I feel like I'm unbiased. I definitely have a bias because I've been in the industry since I was 5 years old.
Any amount of claimed expertise regarding like any topic doesn't contradict a bias. It's why scientific papers often have statements regarding potential bias, conflicts of interest. An actually unbiased person on horse riding would be someone who isn't involved at all, who doesn't ride horses, doesn't own horses. Someone like me. I don't care if horse riding is right or wrong. It doesn't affect me either way. So I'm more likely to just follow the evidence. If anything, I think I would be more likely to be biased towards horse riding being ethical, because that's like one less thing to worry about, right? I don't want it to be harmful for horses. Now, I think the best person to speak on this topic would be someone with the relevant expertise, right? Who knows a lot about horses and horse riding and horse ownership and does not have a bias towards horse riding and horse ownership. But I don't know if a person like that exists. People with the relevant education in a niche interest like this, they're almost inherently going to be biased in favor of riding horses because it's likely riding horses and having an interest in horses is what drove them to become an expert in riding horses in the first place. Despite that, I was able to find an expert, someone who does ride or did ride and has horses and is able to recognize their bias and acknowledge the unpleasant reality of domestication and the nuance around horse riding.
So I have actually read that blog and I do agree with it. I do think she's a little biased. I think for someone to truly be unbiased, they would have to not be vegan and also not be in the equine industry and be able to give just an outside perspective on horses. And if horse riding is truly something that could be ethical or deemed ethical. Yeah, because you can even argue that owning horses in domesticated settings is not truly ethical. I even talked about it in my last live that I don't think horses in domesticated settings can live an adequate life, which is why it's important to give them the best life you possibly can, because they're not living anything like what a wild horse is living out in the open. And I think it's important that since we can't just return horses to the wild, that we do try to give them exercise, mental stimulation, proper food, proper care, you know, turnout, friends, all of that. I think that's all very important to your horse's overall well-being. I don't know if I was really clear or not, but I don't stand by breeding horses. I don't believe in breeding horses or any animal for that matter.
That's great. We're in agreement.
I think that it should be left up to the professionals, and I don't think people should be breeding horses if you don't know what you're doing, if you're just doing it irresponsibly for no fucking reason because you have a horse that you're like, oh, let me find this random ass dude on Craigslist who has $1,000 stud fee for some shitty horse and let me just breed it to my mare.
Oh. Saying you don't support breeding, but you support professionals breeding, then you support breeding. It doesn't matter if you only support certain breeding. If you support anyone breeding animals so that they can be ridden, so that they can become pets, then you support breeding animals. If someone believes that only professional dog breeds should breed dogs, they still support breeding.
Okay, so this was something that, again, I didn't make entirely clear in my first video. I don't support breeding, period. I've never supported breeding. I have adopted every single one of my animals. I've always advocated for people to adopt their animals. However, what I didn't clarify in that video, and this is not me backpedaling, I've talked about this for years on my channel, I just didn't clarify it in that video. I think, again, that in order to make change, we have to start with subtle change. And I didn't explain that in that video because I was just talking to my audience, and my audience has heard me say this a billion times. So what I mean by that, by saying only breed if you're a professional, that's not me, again, saying that I support professionals breeding horses, because I don't. I don't support any breeding, period. I don't think we should be breeding any animal in captivity. I just think it's wrong. Again, leads to overpopulation. I think a lot of those animals can't live a quality life in domesticated settings, etc., etc. All I was getting at with that, and what I've said repeatedly for years, is just that I still don't agree with professionals breeding, but I think we have to work our way up the ladder, where we first off need to say, okay, equestrians should just stop breeding horses if you're just some rando loser. And then once we can get all of that under control, because there's a tremendous amount of irresponsible breeding done by everyday normal people who just want to buy stud fees on Craigslist or dreamhorse.com, what the fuck ever. And I think that's really irresponsible. Everyone wants to breed their mare. Everyone wants to have a baby. And I'm just like, why? Why is this such an important thing for you when there's literally hundreds of horses thousands of horses that are in shelters that need homes. It's just a very weird thing to me, and I just think we need to start from the bottom and work our way up. Eventually, I will start advocating for breeders to stop breeding horses as well. But right now, I'm specifically just focusing on this low-level aspect of every single person who's not a professional should absolutely not be breeding animals. Then once we can get that under control, we can work our way up the ladder. Same thing with working on everyone should start riding in hackamores, not bits. Everyone should start riding in properly fitted tack, not ill-fitted tack, and then work our way up the ladder from there to better and more ethical ways of keeping horses. But we have to start small, and that's kind of what I was getting at. I don't agree with breeding. I want to make that clear. I never have. Let's move on. First of all, horses are totally completely different from keeping tigers and, wildlife. Horses are not wildlife. They've been domesticated for the last, several thousand years.
Their status as domesticated or not is mostly irrelevant. What matters, and what is the same between horses and tigers, is that they cannot be given the lives that they've evolved to lead in captivity. They're also both very large animals with expensive upkeep and environmental impact, and they're also both potentially very dangerous. And some of these criticisms apply to cats and dogs as well, domesticated cats and dogs, and like large dog breeds. A house cat, for instance, is never going to be able to roam as much as he or she would in the wild. And so, adopt, don't shop. It's clearly a problematic relationship, so bringing more of these animals into the world in order to have to live with that relationship is a huge moral issue. Whereas adopting an animal who already exists and who could not be released into the wild is much more of a gray area. There's nothing that's necessarily morally inconsistent between veganism and having a companion animal, but it becomes much more complicated when we have someone like Raleigh who says she's vegan but endorses breeding by professionals for entertainment purposes.
Okay, so again, I want to just say I've already clarified my stance on breeding. I hope that makes sense now. I understand her comparison between tigers and horses, the cost, the danger, the inadequacy of quality of life. I get that. I agree with all those things too. I think at the time I was just speaking more on that's just a really weird comparison between a domesticated animal and then a completely non-domesticated animal. But I get it. I don't think horses can live an adequate life in captivity, which is one of the biggest reasons why I have advocated for riding them, because I think that it's just not okay to leave a horse in essentially a jail cell and never take them out. And most people are not going to take their horses out just to run them around a round pen. Most people will take their horses out, however, and spend time with them and, give them exercise and all of that by riding them. And I think that's way healthier for the horse than just sitting in a jail cell all day, which is essentially what, stabling a horse is like for them. And a lot of people don't have access to put their horses in these massive pastures. There's not hardly any boarding facilities like that available, and even rescue shelters, horse rescue shelters, are not like that most of the time. Horses are still around. We still have like millions of horses that are domesticated and in captivity in the US alone. So yeah, I mean, even if you adopt horses though, nobody is going to have a horse if they're not going to ride them. There's very few people who would own a horse at no benefit to themselves, which is what I was trying to say by that. Even adopting horses. This has nothing to do with breeding or adopting. Nobody is going to keep a horse, or very few people are going to keep horses at no benefit to themselves. And that was the point of what I was saying.
Yeah, I got that. My argument was that getting a benefit from an animal you saved from suffering and death and, ultimately gave a less shitty life to is very different from getting a benefit from an animal that you brought into that situation. Her argument only works if she opposes breeding. She doesn't, and so it doesn't.
I do oppose breeding. I hope that makes a little sense now with what I was saying. I was just saying that, if we're gonna try to give horses a better life that are already, unfortunately, in captivity, especially animals that are living in rescue shelters or had prior abuse situations, We need to give people an incentive to adopt them, and most people, unfortunately, are not going to own or adopt horses if they can't ride them, which is what I was saying.
If dogs didn't like playing fetch very much, but humans liked it so much that it led to them saving dogs and keeping them from being killed in shelters, it might be a fair deal for the dog, at least better than the alternative. But that wouldn't excuse breeding dogs in order to make them play fetch. That's not altruism. It's certainly not vegan.
Again, I know she's still on the breeding thing. I hope I've clarified my stance. Training a wild horse is incredibly different from training a domesticated horse, even a domesticated horse that has had no training. Why? Because one horse has been wild for millions and millions of years.
First, small behavioral differences like that are akin to differences like between dog breeds. Does she think every breed of dog that humanity's created has to be preserved? Or else we're violating like some sacrosanct natural order? I honestly don't know. I don't understand. Truly, I don't think she's thought it through very much, because again, she's not incentivized to do so. Just because we bred some lineage into existence doesn't mean that lineage has to be maintained for all of time.
I think we just misunderstand each other right here, because I was not speaking on the fact that today's current domesticated horses would not be able to be rehabilitated to live in the wild. I agree that they would be able to. My only stance on that is I think it would be destructive to the environment. Also, we're not legally allowed to do that. I was only speaking on people who are more willing to adopt animals that are domesticated in shelters versus wild horses at the auctions. Those horses are wired completely differently from the wild horses that have been untouched throughout all of history, even though at some point they may have been contacted by people.
May have been contacted by people? Is that her attempt to just brush off domestication by like non-modern humans? Like, even if they were domesticated and dominated by ancient civilizations for hundreds or thousands of years, that's just contact. Again, what exactly is the argument here? I'm saying that there's no appeal to species extinction to maintain domesticated horses. She provides no evidence to contradict that, or any argument to support her original claim, which is that it would be bad to lose domesticated horses.
I think we're just misunderstanding each other. Honestly, I couldn't give a single fuck. Obviously, I love my horse, but I understand that he doesn't live the best possible life that he can in a domesticated situation, which is why I try to give him the best life possible. I get it that he would have a better life in the wild if he could possibly live in the wild this day and age, but unfortunately that's just not possible. I don't think we're disagreeing here. I think that we just are misunderstanding each other a little bit, because I don't disagree with what she's saying. I wasn't really making this video responding to her. From me rewatching myself, it seems like I was mostly just making this video talking to my audience, which I know they've watched the vast majority of my videos and know my stances and arguments on things, which is something that I could maybe make a little bit more clear in future videos. She kind of in a way is like, well, you're agreeing with me, but you're not. And she's right, I am agreeing with her. I think that I'm just not getting my point across properly, and we're talking about two different things. If we stop breeding horses, like let's take her utopian version, which is not gonna happen. If everyone stopped breeding horses, then you would still be left with millions of horses for the next 30 or 40 years, because horses live a very long time that you need to take care of, and somebody needs to pay the vet bills for that animal. So what are you saying?
I'm saying that her position does not justify perpetuating the industry. You can have adopted horses and still ride them while agreeing that the ideal would be that these are the last horses ever born into captivity, and any future horses should be free, should be born in the wild.
I totally agree with that. Maybe I just didn't make myself clear. That's been my stance pretty much the whole time I've had this channel. I've never advocated for breeding. I've never advocated for anything other than adopting horses. Really, I think I was just so upset, and this is again not an excuse, because I know better than that. I should have been better, and I will be better in the future when I react to people. But I was just so upset with that vegan teacher that I was just not even really listening to what she had to say, which is why I didn't want to watch the video all the way through. And that's ignorance on my part. It made me look foolish, and uneducated. It made me look like I didn't know anything about veganism and that I was a fake vegan, which I'm not. I agree with everything she's saying. I totally understand how I came across. I hope I'm clarifying myself a little bit.
You can excuse the benefit you get from a horse in exchange for paying for, vet care and taking care of the horse, but only if you don't support breeding. You can't justify bringing more horses into the world for entertainment with that reasoning. Literally, she stands against a future where every horse born is born free, is born in the wild with their herd. I don't like playing vegan police. I don't like calling people not vegan, but literally what she supports is not vegan. It's supporting breeding for entertainment is not vegan by definition. So I really encourage her, I'm not saying she's a fake vegan. I think she really just does not understand. I really encourage her to learn more about veganism and more about animal exploitation.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree how I came across. Again, that's not what I believe in.
I don't think missing a meal is a death sentence. I don't think that vegan teacher was saying that if they misbehave ever, then they're just never fed. And look, according to pro-equestrian sources, denying food does happen. The big thing that really neither side gets is that it doesn't have to be every horse. Permitting individuals to own horses inevitably means some will be neglected and abused.
Right, and I completely understand that. What I was just saying by that is the fact that that's kind of why my channel is around, is not because I'm okay with horses being in domesticated situations where they are being abused. I understand that happens and it shouldn't happen. And that's kind of the whole purpose of my channel, is to call people out like that, because that's not okay. Depriving your animal of food just because they misbehave. I mean, I've talked about this many times, I don't even believe that horses can misbehave. I don't think horses misbehave because they're just horses, That's just horse behavior. And by people wanting their horses to be these dead machines, I think that's really wrong. It's unethical. It's terrible. If you're going to ride a horse, I don't think it's appropriate to take everything that horse is out of them. Let the horse be a horse and just accept what the horse gives you, because you are privileged to be sitting on them and riding them. You are not owed anything when it comes to riding horses. That's a privilege. So I think it's wrong for people to say my horse is misbehaving, because it's just a horse and the horse doesn't fucking owe you anything. They don't have jobs. They're horses.
The inevitable harm of horse breeding and ownership is so relevant not only because it's more likely, but because of the acute lack of material benefit in the world to maintaining this industry. Ending the industry will inconvenience tens of thousands of people and mean they'll have to find another way to earn money. There might be some argument for phasing it out gradually if you're super concerned about that small of an economic impact, let's be honest. But there's no good argument for defending and perpetuating the industry forever.
So I think it would be a lot more of an economic impact if we were to end the entire equestrian community and industry as a whole. I think it's a lot bigger than what she thinks it is. There's millions of people who work within the industries. I think it would be a lot larger of an impact than what she thinks. The problem is not, let's eliminate all of horse ownership. That's not the issue. That's not even a possibility.
Like how it wasn't possible to end feudalism or to prohibit ownership of humans, ownership of women, child slavery. Thinking something might be difficult is not a reason in and of itself to not do it.
No, I totally agree. And again, I don't think I came off right. Again, to clarify, I think eventually we can get to a point where we can realize that horses should be in the wild, should not be kept in domestic situations, because it's not very good for them. I feel like eventually we can get there, just like eventually everybody can hopefully become vegan. My whole point by saying that was, I just don't think we should be advocating initially for the entire demise of the entire industry as a whole, because otherwise, it's just never gonna happen if we do that. Nobody's ever gonna take it seriously, which is why we should just start small and move up the ladder. The problem is, how do we further educate the equestrian community and the general public to better treat their horses and better communicate and better understand their animals?
And I think that's a noble goal, but I don't think it justifies being so hostile to those of us who disagree with you, particularly if you're not gonna come to the table with evidence. And it definitely doesn't justify defending the continuation of these practices. If your whole argument is we should defend horse ownership because it might be hard to end it, then you have no argument.
I'm not trying to defend horse ownership at all. I was just trying to defend people riding their horses in captive situations in order to give their horse a better life rather than just letting them sit there.
The practice as a whole is wrong. Anyone endorsing that practice is wrong, especially those like Raleigh who believe horses would be better off in the wild. Much of horse ownership is a privileged minority, right? Much like tiger ownership. You don't have to change the hearts and minds of diehard horse owners, right? You just have to work on everybody else, the vast majority of people who don't own horses, and convince them that this is a tradition that needs to die. This is something we've seen over and over and over again.
Oh my God. First of all, no, horse ownership is not a minority. There's more than 2 million horse owners across the United States, and most of those people own multiple horses. By the way, I want to clarify, I understand that horse ownership in the US is a minority. I was mostly speaking on the amount of horses that people have in captivity in regards to being relinquished to the wild. Again, I didn't clarify it. This is just embarrassing. And on top of that, I'm not out here trying to convince the general public. I'm out here trying to educate other equestrians into treating their animals better and more ethically so they have a better life.
That's fine, but that's not who I'm talking to, and I don't think that's who that vegan teacher is talking to. We're talking to the general public. We're not expecting to change the hearts and minds of equestrians. Her activism is, trying to reduce abuse. We are promoting abolition of the industry. They're both worthy causes, in my opinion.
You cannot just ask for the demise of an entire industry. That's not something that you can just ask people for because it's never going to happen.
I don't think she has a crystal ball, and the stats she presented trying to intimidate us with the power of the equestrian lobby are pretty uninspiring. Maybe she can't come out with that ask because it would be, poorly received by her demographic. I'm sure it would be, but that doesn't mean we can't. And it doesn't mean that she's doing good by attacking activists who are appealing to a different demographic. Ending horse ownership just by the numbers looks like pretty low-hanging fruit, like trophy hunting or fur or SeaWorld.
Veganism still hasn't ended any of those things. At least from what I remember, you can still trophy hunt, you can still go to SeaWorld, and they're all fucked up, all the things she lists. So veganism hasn't been able to end any of those, even with, the amount of scrutiny that SeaWorld came under. It blows my mind that they still have a business and people still go to support them and they still make money, at least from what I remember. My only point with that is I understand and I agree that horses should be in the wild, but again, this is a ladder that I'm trying to work up towards. Everybody who's subscribed to me on YouTube, a lot of them, yeah, they do own horses, but the vast majority of them, at least from the fan art that I've received, from the comments I get and the emails I get, they don't own horses. In fact, I've talked to a lot of people about why you shouldn't own horses, and I've made videos on why you shouldn't own horses. They're expensive, they don't live an adequate life in captivity, blah, 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 blah. But I do think that the horses we have in domesticated situations, they need a home. And they can't just sit in rescue shelters waiting to be euthanized or be shipped overseas to be slaughtered, etc., because they need to have someone who cares about them. They need to be in a loving home. And a lot of people won't adopt horses and house them unless they are able to ride them. So my objective here is allowing people to ride horses appropriately in better ways that don't harm them and giving them a better life and ending abuse for captive domesticated horses. That's my whole objective. I understand we are going at two different completely groups of people. Everyone who owns a horse knows that it's not good to lock a horse up in a 10x10 stall all fucking day long. Everyone knows that. All equestrians know that. But unfortunately, most people who own horses, they don't have their own properties. And even if they do, they don't have the money to buy big, extravagant pieces of land. So they just try to give their horse the best life they possibly can, since you can't relinquish to the wild.
It's not clear how exactly we handle this situation, the situation we've gotten ourselves into regarding captive horses. Nor has it been clear how to handle the resolution of a number of moral atrocities throughout history. Clearly, some have been ended in less than ideal ways. It may even end up being true that breeding itself has to be ended in stages for optimal outcome. But that alone is not an argument for the indefinite perpetuation of the industry. And it's certainly not an argument for attacking those of us who are just trying to be consistent with our moral values and are only trying to inform people of the inherent problems in this kind of relationship, ownership, and exploitation of another feeling, thinking, living being for no good reason. To wrap this up, I find it interesting how different Raleigh is when she's like addressing that vegan teacher and now me, versus like this video where she's addressing people who are like literally abusing horses. Even though these people, they're whipping their horses, they're forcing them into a dangerous situation for views, as she says, she remains calm and understanding. It's really great. Honestly, it's a really good video.
I'm super concerned for all of the people who post stuff like this because I get it, right? Like they're just trying to make a name for themselves. They're just trying to get attention and get their name out there and maybe have a social media career, which I mean, to be honest, guys, it's not that great. And it's definitely not worth risking your horse's safety and your safety.
But when it comes to me and that vegan teacher, people who are saying riding horses is unethical, or in my case, maybe riding horses is unethical.
Oh my fucking god, bitch. Oh my god. Ren Hurst. Oh my god. Let's go find her on YouTube. I'm sweating. I'm so aggravated right now. I'm literally sweating. This is one of the dumbest ladies I've ever reacted to ever.
Could it be that in the first case, like her position, her lifestyle is not being questioned? She doesn't treat her horses this way, so it's easy for her to be calm and collected when responding to it. In the second, we are directly questioning her lifestyle, something that is obviously very important to her, and it pisses her off. I just don't see the value, honestly, in hearing about the ethics of horse riding, horse ownership, horse breeding from someone who, one, can't handle a simple discussion on the topic without getting angry, and two, would obviously be very upset if she could not own and ride horses.
I understand how I came across in those two videos. Again, I clarified in the beginning of this video that I was just angry and extremely overwhelmed going into making that video about her and that vegan teacher. I try very hard to be level-headed when I react to people, even when it's people questioning me in my life. I try very, very hard to be vegan, be an animal activist. I try to care about all these things and promote things to people, and I understand there's times where I mess up. I'm very passionate about being vegan and being an animal activist and taking better care of your horse and all of that. I was just so overwhelmed because for the last 4 or 5 years of my life, I've just been relentlessly attacked just for the simple fact that I'm vegan and I also have a horse. I was very mad. I mean, I literally even contemplated if I should even call myself vegan publicly anymore last year because I was just so overwhelmed with everything and just getting viciously attacked by people who I thought were in my community. And, you know, it was just really disheartening for me, which is why I responded the way I did, which was idiotic, it was unprofessional, it was foolish, and I do want to apologize for that because I shouldn't have made that video.
So that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. You know, I don't hate Raleigh or anything. I think this is just an area where she really can't be objective on. Again, I've watched some of her other videos and I think they're really good, and she's obviously very knowledgeable when it comes to certain things, you know, regarding horses and horse ownership, and I like that she is exposing the abuses going on, especially these like viral videos on TikTok and shit like that. And obviously she has the ability to acknowledge when she's been wrong or hasn't you know, understood an issue. She opens this video saying that there have been times where I don't know exactly what she's talking about, she wasn't specific, but she said she's made videos about topics that she didn't really understand and she made mistakes, and so she doesn't do that anymore. So obviously she can admit when she's wrong, and that's really great. But yeah, maybe not when it comes to horse riding.
I don't hate her. I'm glad I made this video. I'm sorry it was long. I just wanted to, you know, apologize. I wanted to watch her video in entirety give everything a fair shot. I want to do as minimal editing on this as possible just because I feel bad. I feel like I trashed another fellow YouTuber who really is a good person, and I do agree with everything she said. I think we just misunderstood each other, which is my bad. I could have presented myself better. I could have clarified my stances on things. I don't blame her for the video she made. I think it's fair. I should have been called out for being wrong. I was wrong with a lot of the things I said. I hope this clears some things up for future reference. I am gonna delete the video I made about her because, God, I mean, it's just embarrassing. Like, I didn't clarify myself. I was very emotional, very angry, mostly just because I felt like for years I was being attacked, and you know what, that's not an excuse. It's not an excuse to have made the video I did. I feel bad about it, so I want to take it down. So I hope this cleared the air a little bit. I love you guys so much. I'll see you guys in my next video. All of those links are down below. Massive thanks to Coldest for sponsoring this. New link equestrian clothes are out now as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to watch any horse-related content, you can go on my Patreon. I do a lot of Liberty videos with Link and just fun videos at the barn. So that's all I have for today's video. I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.